With the rise in popularity of shows like RuPaul's Drag Race and Pose, and the increased exposure drag queens receive on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, drag as an art form has started to move into mainstream media, increasing both interest in and criticism of drag from outside the community. Whether it's criticizing drag's presentation of gender or trying to ban it completely, people who are unfamiliar with the art form seem to share a common concern. Are drag shows appropriate for children? The short answer to this question is also every lawyer's favorite answer. It depends. The long answer requires a better understanding of drag and a journey back to the origin of the art form, thousands of years ago. To start, let's look at the question, what is drag? As I discussed in my other video, drag is the art of performing a gender or presenting as a different gender, usually creating a persona for the purpose of entertainment that is often an exaggeration of gender stereotypes. A performance artist who dresses as a woman is called a drag queen, and a performance artist who dresses as a man is called a drag king. The most common drag queens shown in mainstream media are gay men dressing up as women, but any performer dressing as an exaggerated persona of a woman can be called a drag queen, whether they're straight or gay, male or female, transgender, cisgender, or non-binary. In fact, some drag kings and queens don't dress up as men or women at all, but as androgynous people or fantastical monsters. It's important to note that in drag, women are not the butt of the joke. The ridiculous costumes and exaggerated stereotypes are criticizing gender roles, not women themselves, and they're expressing how fluid gender and gender expression can be. Now that we know what drag is, when did the art form begin? By the definition I just outlined, people have been dressing in drag for about as long as clothing has been associated with gender. The first well-known example of this is ancient Greek theater. Since women weren't allowed to participate, all the female roles were played by men wearing what was considered women's clothing. This practice continued in theater performances across cultures and across thousands of years, like in Shakespeare's plays and in the later part of Japan's Kabuki tradition. Some say that this style of cross-dressing for theatrical roles may have inspired the term drag, when men complained that the long dresses they had to wear dragged across the floor. With the rise of vaudeville and burlesque shows around the 19th century, women began to participate in drag theater as well, often dressing up as men for shock value or comedic effect. One drag performer during this time, Julian Eltinge, won critical acclaim for his cross-dressing performance in the play The Fascinating Widow, and has sometimes been referred to as the greatest female impersonator of all time. Across all these plays and shows, the appropriateness for children would depend on the subject matter of the stories and the actions of the actors in their costumes, not the actor dressing up like another gender by itself. When sodomy was outlawed in the 1920s, many drag artists were forced to perform their craft in secret. Because this period coincided with Prohibition, the rise of speakeasies helped foster spaces for drag artists to gather and perform openly as homosexuals. In this way, drag became more closely associated with gay men and women because there was so much overlap between the two groups. When not performing their individual shows, these artists would compete in drag balls that showcased drag artists' dancing, lip-syncing, and modeling abilities. This surge in popularity became known as the Pansy Craze in the early 1930s and featured artists like Jean Maullin, Bruce Fletcher, and Ray Bourbon. Children would not have even been allowed at venues like these, so these artists catered their performances to their older audiences, usually featuring witty jokes or songs. Some drag artists perform in a similar style today, but drag has long evolved past the days of Prohibition. Though the end of Prohibition ended the underground clubs at the heart of the pansy craze, drag continued to be showcased in films like Arizona to Broadway and Victor and Victoria. However, in 1934, Hollywood implemented a set of guidelines to govern the making of motion pictures, the Hays Code. These guidelines strictly prohibited showcasing drag performers in films in the US because of their association with the lgbtq+ community. So, with a few exceptions, drag performers were only showcased in films from other countries until the Hays Code was repealed in 1968 and replaced with the MPAA rating system we still use today. That same year, Mother Flawless Sabrina starred as the subject of the documentary The Queen, which told the story of the 1967 Miss All-America Camp Beauty Contest held at New York City's Town Hall. Thanks to the success of the documentary, Flawless Sabrina became one of the first widely known drag queens in the US and went on to become an activist and pioneer for trans people and drag queens, organizing pageants, facing multiple arrests, and appearing in drag on various talk shows. Since these films all came out before the MPAA rating system, it can be difficult to judge their appropriateness for children without doing a little more research. Luckily, several plot summaries and descriptions exist online to help you decide if these films are the right fit for your family. Outside the film industry, it was estimated that there were at least 500 open, regularly performing drag queens in the US by the late 1960s. That number was likely higher, but many drag performers had to keep their art a secret. Law enforcement regularly cracked down on LGBTQ+ clubs and bars, arresting anyone in women's clothing who didn't verify their sex, or any women who weren't wearing at least 3 articles of feminine clothing. These raids, of course, eventually led to the Stonewall Rebellion of 1969, one of the most important events in the gay rights movement, with drag queens and trans people leading the charge. Other drag queens rising in popularity around this time included Dame Edna Everage, who was Australian comedian Barry Humphrey's satirization of suburban lifestyle, and Divine, the provocative star of John Waters' film Pink Flamingos, who inspired the character of Ursula in Disney's The Little Mermaid. In 1975, Tim Curry played the iconic Transylvanian scientist Dr. Frank N. Furter in the cult classic Rocky Horror Picture Show. And the 80s sparked the trend of pop performers dressing in drag, like Philip Oakey, Pete Burns, and Boy George. In 1985, drag legend Lady Bunny founded the festival that became known as Wigstock. And in 1988, Divine starred as Tracy's mother in the movie musical Hairspray, establishing the tradition of a man in drag playing that role. In 1990, Jenny Livingston released her documentary Paris is Burning, which offered an in-depth look at the predominantly African-American and Latino drag ball culture of Harlem in New York City in the late 1980s. The documentary also focuses on the lives of its contestants and the trials they faced outside drag. One of the ways queens found community during this time was by forming local houses, both to support each other's drag careers and for safety and protection if they'd been thrown out of their homes. The tradition of drag houses continues today as a way of forming community between performers with similar drag styles and goals. If you're wondering if a live performance like any of these is appropriate for children, you can use several helpful context clues: location, time of day, and performer's reputation. For example, many restaurants that feature drag queens cater the earlier performances towards families with children. The songs are censored or more kid-friendly, and the performers know to dance and dress differently. Yes, there are shows late at night in bars or clubs that are geared towards an older audience, but that doesn't mean that all drag shows are that way. The 1990s also saw the rise to fame of one of the most influential drag queens of all time, RuPaul Andre Charles. RuPaul has often been credited with bringing drag into mainstream media through her TV show RuPaul's Drag Race, which premiered in 2009 and has episodes with ratings ranging from TV-14 to TVMA. The show has expanded to many different countries, and exposure from appearing on the show continues to catapult contestants to success, even if they don't win. The drag queens who compete on the show come from all over the world, and each have their own unique style or take on the art form. Yes, some of them focus on the sexual characteristics of femininity, but many of them focus on comedy, design, or music that is perfectly appropriate for all ages. In 2018, FX released its TV show Pose to worldwide acclaim that led to Billy Porter's first Emmy, making him the first openly gay black man to be nominated for and win an Emmy in a leading category. Since these shows were produced much more recently than the movies we discussed, they have clear ratings in addition to multiple descriptions and summaries online to help you decide if they're okay for your children to watch. Today, drag shows are as diverse as the performers themselves. They can range from burlesque performances at a nightclub to reading a book to children in a library, but none of them are attempting to recruit children or harm their audiences in any way. Yes, there are going to be some artists and performances that are appropriate for all ages, and some that aren't, but with a quick bit of research, it's usually very easy to determine which is which. Dressing up as another gender is not inherently inappropriate for young viewers. In fact, it might be helpful for them. Letting kids watch drag does not put them in danger or brainwash them. It just lets them know that people like this exist. It lets them know that if they're LGBTQ+, there are people out there who are like them, and it encourages them to love themselves. When children see themselves reflected in these artists, they can begin to think more deeply about their ever-evolving societal landscape and may even start conversations about queer history, oppression, and activism. Drag is a powerful form of creative expression that anyone can participate in. It's an art form that uses a sense of humor to elevate the human spirit and challenge harmful gender norms. It is not about deceiving or tricking anyone. It's about reinventing and reimagining yourself as a character that showcases the best parts of yourself. It's a fun way to play with femininity and masculinity and embrace aspects of both. To give any sort of blanket statement about drag only demonstrates ignorance and a fundamental misunderstanding of drag as an art form. You wouldn't say that all concerts or movies or books or TV shows are inappropriate for children just because some of them are. If you're a parent, it's best to accept that your children will discover what they want to learn with or without you. You can either be there to help teach and guide them through this new experience, or let them lie to you and hide it from you and grow into themselves without you. So, should your 8-year-old go see a burlesque drag show at a bar? No, probably not. But could they listen to a drag queen read at a local library? Or learn how to do makeup from a drag queen on YouTube? Or dance and wave at their favorite performer on a float at a pride parade? Absolutely. Drag is not inherently dangerous to children, but what is incredibly deadly and dangerous is suppressing children's creativity and shielding them from experiences that could help them discover themselves and grow into who they are as people. So the next time your child wants to go to a drag show, the only thing you should ask is if they'd like help picking out the best outfit. As always, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something today. If you did, please leave a comment, like, share, and subscribe. See you next time!